So I've been thinking about this for some time, and I figured now is a good time to talk about this. Let one thing be clear. I am very, very excited for Resident Evil 8. In my last Resident Evil 8 video, I briefly talked about some of my concerns for this upcoming game. While I'm not really a huge fan of the first-person perspective, I find that a first-person perspective does help to amplify the horror because it's literally in your face. I also appreciate that this game is a direct sequel to Resident Evil 7. This is clear due to the fact that we have the returning characters of Resident Evil 7, that being Ethan, Mia, and Chris. And I have heard that not everyone liked Ethan as a main protagonist, and I can see why. But I do appreciate that while the other mainline games in the series are direct sequels, this one changes things up a bit by using the same protagonist from the previous game instead of switching them for another. Let me explain what I mean. In Resident Evil 1, you have Jill and Chris. In Resident Evil 2, you have Leon and Claire. Resident Evil 3, back to Jill. And 4, back to Leon, so on and so forth. You get the idea. Another thing I am hoping for with Resident Evil 8 is the return of other characters from the series. Chris was given a completely new design in Resident Evil 7, and we also have new and updated designs currently for Claire, Jill, and Leon. And you can also consider the multiplayer game Reverse that's releasing with the game as a possibility to allow this to happen, since Reverse will allow you to play with these various characters from the series. So, what am I truly excited for? Well, other than seeing how the story continues and how it all connects to the previous games, I'm excited for a new AAA horror game that'll scare me to death. But I do have some personal concerns with this upcoming title. I mentioned in my last Resident Evil video that I am in the minority of those who didn't care for Resident Evil 4 and who doesn't like it. And before you say anything about my comment just now, keep a few things in mind. I didn't play the game when it first released. I couldn't really get through the controls of the game, the being stuck while aiming and wherever you can't move while you aim. Just the camera angle was bad. I just didn't really, it couldn't stick with me. And I personally don't really care about Leon as a character. I prefer Chris over Leon. There are those who prefer Leon over Chris. But overall, I prefer Jill over all the other characters. But that's a story for another time. So before you guys tear my ass up in the comments about this, once again, I didn't play it when it released, and I only played it on the PlayStation 4 when it was released on there. So again, I couldn't really get through the camera view, the controls. It was just a deal breaker for me. But I am planning to go back and complete Resident Evil 4 because I only played at least around maybe 30 minutes or so of the game, which of course that's not enough time to really judge a game. But I am going to try to go back to it before the release of 8 so that I can have everything in my mind in terms of story and stuff like that. So how does my issues with Resident Evil 4 create a concern for Resident Evil 8? Well, let me explain. I was raised on the idea and mindset that Resident Evil was about zombies. Then I learned it was about zombies created by a virus that was created by some dumbasses in a lab. And then I learned it was about zombies created by a virus created by dumbasses in a lab used as a bioweapon for military use. And that the Raccoon City incident was kind of like a test to see how the virus works, as well as how the tyrants work within those situations, so that the military can decide if they want these kind of bioweapons or not. There's a lot of videos out there on YouTube that talk more about this in detail. But with that being said, it's the type of enemy variety in Resident Evil 8 that does concern me. Not in terms of a lack of variety, because there does seem to be a decent amount of different enemy types, but more so in the types of enemies that we do have to fight. As I said, I thought Resident Evil was about zombies and infected individuals, and I guess other types of creatures such as tyrants and I guess crows and spiders. And then with Resident Evil 7, we did have the mold creatures, but they were humans who were infected by this kind of virus. And I did have some issues with the Bakers, mainly because of the crazy transformations they would go through throughout the game. But then again, the first person perspective does add a huge horror element to it. So going forward with that, because it does seem like I am rambling, but let me get to the point. My concern with Resident Evil 8's enemy variety is that I'm hoping to play Resident Evil, not Van Helsing. And with that, what that means basically is, why are we, instead of fighting infected individuals and zombies, why are we battling werewolves and vampires? Sorry, sexy vampires and giants. And the reason why this connects with part 4 is that Resident Evil 4 did have infected individuals, but it also had that giant fish and the giant troll thing you gotta fight. There's that little guy that I mentioned before that turns into that giant monsterish thing. So that's where my concern comes in with the enemy variety, is the fact that it is kind of using the idea from Resident Evil 4 that there will be things that you're fighting that are not zombies and infected people. Now, another concern that I have for this game is, in the trailers, they are talking about Ethan as if he's such a big deal. And sure, he survived the Bakers, but that's about it. You know, he doesn't have the military training that, you know, Chris has gone through, or, you know, I guess now Leon probably has gone through it now. He hasn't dealt with anything major such as the Spencer Mansion or Raccoon City. He wasn't part of the issue with Resident Evil 6, because that was a big, you know, infectious disaster. And he didn't have to deal with certain creations such as Nemesis. You know, these are big deals of enemies that these characters were able to survive from. But Ethan just survived the mansion of, you know, a crazy family that was infected. So while I was doing the editing and I heard myself say that, I actually forgot that in Resident Evil 7, some of the characters do become crazy, monstrous forms like Jack and Evelyn. So that was my bad. I completely forgot that Ethan did handle somewhat of giant threats and crazy, monstrous threats. That was my bad. Sorry. Now, we don't know how much time has passed between 7 and 8, but I don't think the time that has passed between the two games is worthy of getting Ethan this new quote-unquote legendary status. So moving on, as I mentioned before, I wasn't a fan of Resident Evil 4, and I fear that this game is used as a placeholder to test out certain mechanics and features, so that these mechanics and features, if they are successful, can be implemented in the Resident Evil 4 remake. This being non-zombie enemies like the giants, and the quote-unquote new inventory and crafting system, which is clearly taken from Resident Evil 4, and they even mentioned that in the Resident Evil showcase. And you also have the return of the merchant, which was a major feature in Resident Evil 4, and I believe only in Resident Evil 4. And if you didn't know by now that they are currently working on a Resident Evil 4 remake, then you're living under a bigger rock than Patrick Star. And who knows, with these new theories that I'm providing, maybe the Resident Evil 4 remake would be a first-person game. As I mentioned way earlier on, with the main games in this series, the Capcom did like to switch things up, giving you different characters. And then with the remakes that we recently got, both 2 and 3, they, you know, changed certain things, they removed certain things. So Capcom isn't afraid to change anything and try new things. And therefore, I can see with Resident Evil 4 remake, Capcom can go either way, with a third person again or a first person again. So ultimately, with everything that I've mentioned, I am excited for Resident Evil 8. I am excited for the fear that I may face. But I am also skeptical of how much it may be similar to Resident Evil 4 and whether or not I will enjoy that. That being said, I am going to go back to Resident Evil 4 and try to put more time into it and try to complete it. And hopefully it'll change my perspective. With all that being said, I know it was a long video and I apologize for it. I'm at Dylan Tech. Thank you for watching and listening to me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope that you are also excited for Resident Evil 8. And I know a lot of you do like Resident Evil 4 and I don't. And that's okay. We're all entitled to our own opinions. Like I said, I am in the minority of those who didn't like the game. So no need to question me on it. I have already questioned myself on it. But again, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next one. Goodbye.